step aside. She's under review.
Back! That badge is fake.
The badge flashed inches from my wife's face, plastic and shiny, as the board chair smirked and blocked the sidewalk. Unfit, she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, as the fake officer leaned in and asked for compliance. Emily's hand went to her stomach, instinctive, protective, and I felt the world tilt. I told them the truth before the crowd could breathe. That badge wasn't registered. That uniform wasn't recognized. And the officer had no authority here, not even close. The enforcer in crimson blinked, surprised, then smiled like she'd already won. If you've ever felt that surge when standing up to bullies, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I've spent years auditing risk for cities that crumble under pretend power, and I know how fast lies fold when pressure is applied. My name is Daniel Whitaker, and I protect people from institutions that forget their limits. The tyrant in heels didn't know that yet. Emily was 32 weeks along, high risk, cleared only to walk short distances. The notice board behind us, safety and wellness, listed violations in neat black ink, a public wall of shame. Seeing her name there felt like a sentence. This wasn't about rules. It was about control, about forcing fear into compliance. The clipboard queen waved the paper again and motioned to the man in uniform. He stepped closer, blocking the sun, talking over my wife as if she were furniture. Neighbors slowed, phones out, someone whispered. Another shook their head. The sidewalk felt narrower, the air heavier. I asked for credentials. He reached for his belt. Veronica Hale laughed and told me not to interfere with community enforcement. The phrase landed wrong. I'd heard it before, right before insurance collapses and boards scatter. I felt calm settle in, cold and clear. Emily's breathing changed, shorter, faster. I put myself between her and the badge, felt the heat of eyes on my back. The board chair warned me about consequences, about reports, about removal. I looked past her to the notice board and saw other names, crossed out, erased, rewritten. A pattern. The fake cop's radio crackled. Nothing official ever sounds like that. He shifted his weight, uncertain, and that was when I knew this wasn't a mistake. It was a system, a performance. And Veronica Hale was directing it. I asked the crowd a question instead of them. Who gave this man authority? Who trained him? Who ensured this? Silence answered. Somewhere behind me, a car door slammed. A neighbor murmured Emily's name. My wife squeezed my hand, trying to steady me when it should have been the other way around. The enforcer in crimson leaned closer and said the word again, unfit, like a verdict. I felt anger rise, sharp and focused. I told them to step back. I told them this ends today. The fake officer moved first, shoulder brushing mine, and the moment snapped. Where are you watching from? I remember the sound before anything else. Not a scream, not a siren. Bone meeting ground, sudden and final, as the lie collapsed under its own weight. I stood there shaking, holding Emily, knowing the neighborhood had just crossed a line it couldn't uncross. I knew the board would try to spin it away, call it an accident, blame tempers. They always do. But patterns leave fingerprints, and liability follows lies like a shadow. Somewhere in this crowd, someone was watching, weighing truth against comfort. I could feel the system straining already, threads pulling tight. This street had cameras, bylaws, insurers, and a history of shortcuts. I promised myself I wouldn't let today vanish into rumor. Not with Emily trembling beside me, not with our child kicking, not with a neighborhood pretending this was normal. The reckoning had begun, even if no one else saw it yet. Today counted. The urgent care doors hissed open and swallowed us into white light and antiseptic air. Emily's fingers were ice around mine, her other hand braced on her belly like she could shield our baby from the noise outside. A nurse saw the tremor in her breathing and moved fast, steering us into a curtained bay. 3rd trimester. High risk, I said, steady even while my pulse hammered. She was pushed into a confrontation. Emily tried to wave it off. I'm fine. I just need a minute. The words didn't match the tightness in her jaw. I watched the cuff cinch around her arm, watched numbers climb and settle, and I hated Veronica Hale for turning a sunny sidewalk into a medical assessment. The nurse stepped out to grab a doctor. The moment the curtain went quiet, my phone vibrated. Neighbors, unknown numbers, the HOA group thread exploding. I silenced it until Emily nodded that she was okay. When I finally looked, the board chair was already rewriting reality. Veronica Hale had posted a community safety update with the confidence of someone who believed truth was negotiable. She called the uniformed man a contracted patrol agent. She described Emily as agitated and non-compliant. Then she slipped in the poison, a wellness review, as if pregnancy were a violation. My stomach went cold. This wasn't damage control. It was an escalation. A new message popped up from Linda Morales. Call me. Now. I stepped into the hallway. Linda, I said, what do you know? Don't hang up, she breathed. They've done this before. Not exactly like today, but the pattern. It's the same. With the fake cop? With intimidation, she corrected. With shame. With that notice board. Veronica Hale uses it like a weapon. She targets whoever won't bow. Images flashed. Names on the safety and wellness board. Crossed out, rewritten, turned into warnings. The tyrant in heels saying unfit, like she owned the word. Linda's voice tightened. She threatened Mrs. Klein about her oxygen tank, said it was a hazard. And she tried to fine a widow for too many meal deliveries, called it unauthorized caregiving. People got scared. They paid. They stayed quiet. Why didn't anyone report her? Because she stays in the fog, Linda said. A warning here, a fine there, and now that man in the uniform, he's been circling at night, slapping violations on windshields. Folks don't want trouble, Daniel. They just want peace. Peace. That's what she sold while she built fear. Linda lowered her voice. And Daniel? She's been talking about you, about Emily, in meetings. She called you a risk, said your wife's condition makes the neighborhood liable. The word hit harder than the shove outside. Liability lived in my world, not hers. Hearing it from Linda told me the clipboard queen wasn't improvising. She was building a case. If she can label her unfit, Linda whispered, she'll try to push you out. Quietly. Paperwork. Pressure. A hearing. I ended the call and stared at the blank wall, letting anger cool into focus. False authority. Public defamation. Medical discrimination. A board chair pretending she could police bodies. When I stepped back into the bay, Emily searched my face. What is it? I leaned close, careful, and squeezed her hand. It's bigger than today, I said. Veronica Hale is turning this into a campaign. Emily swallowed, eyes glossy but steady. Then we don't let her. In the waiting room, a man in a windbreaker sat near the TV, jaw clenched, eyes flicking to my wife's chart every time a nurse said our name. He wasn't in uniform, but the posture was unmistakable. When our eyes met, he looked away like he'd witnessed something he couldn't unsee and didn't know which side to stand on. Behind her, the monitor beeped, steady and insistent, while somewhere back in our neighborhood, the enforcer in crimson was already sharpening her next lie. Behind the curtain, Emily's monitor kept a steady rhythm, but my thoughts wouldn't settle. The last line in Veronica Hale's post, fitness review pending, looped in my head like a threat. The board chair didn't just want obedience. She wanted a label that could follow my wife into every doorway we walked through. The man in the windbreaker stood when a nurse called out another name. He took one step forward, then stopped, like his body couldn't decide if it belonged in the line or in the shadows. His hands hovered near his pockets, then pulled back. He wasn't watching the TV. He was watching us. I stepped into the hallway. He drifted after me, then froze when he realized I'd noticed. He swallowed hard, eyes dropping to the floor tiles. You were there, I said. He gave a tiny nod, too small to count as agreement, too honest to be denial. His shoulders rose and fell once, heavy. I didn't... He started, then stopped. His jaw flexed. I'm not with them. Then why are you here? I asked. His gaze flicked toward Emily's bay, then away, ashamed of the look. Feet angled toward the exit, torso angled toward us, duty and conscience pulling him apart. I live in Cedar Ridge, he said. Mark Delaney. What do you do, Mark? I asked. His throat worked. Sheriff's office, he admitted, like it cost him something. Off duty. I came when I heard the commotion. That explained the tension in his posture. He understood exactly what that fake badge meant. and he understood what it meant to challenge someone like Veronica Hale. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, then forced his hands to his sides, trying to look composed. "I should have stepped in sooner," he muttered. "You should have," I said, "because Veronica Hale is using a man in costume to harass people." At her name, his eyes snapped up, then fell. He flinched like I'd said something dangerous out loud. "She's loud," he said carefully. "She's reckless," I corrected. "And now she's calling my pregnant wife unfit." Mark's fingers curled into a fist, then relaxed. He exhaled, slow, measured. "That's not okay," he said, and I could hear the truth fighting through his caution. He leaned in, voice dropping. "That guy out there, he's not in any county system. No certification, no commission. If he's flashing that badge, it's impersonation territory." My mind clicked through pathways: sheriff's department, city compliance, insurance carriers. Outside authority didn't care about HOA theatrics. They cared about fraud, liability, and public safety. "Did you see who hired him?" I asked. Mark hesitated. His eyes darted toward the waiting room, then up to the black camera dome above us. He swallowed again. "I saw the enforcer in crimson hand him a folder," he said, barely audible. "Right by that safety and wellness board. She acted like she owned the street." So the clipboard queen had touched it. Directly. Mark's shoulders sagged for a second, the mask slipping. "If I speak up," he said, "she'll come after my family. She's done it before." I didn't soften. "If you stay quiet," I told him, "she'll do it again. And next time it won't be my wife. It'll be someone who can't fight back." Mark stared at his hands, then looked up at me. His eyes were wet but steady. Conflict still there, just shifting. "I'll help," he said, voice trembling once. "But you have to be smart. The board chair doesn't lose unless the outside world forces her to." A nurse brushed past us, and Mark stepped aside automatically, then returned to the same spot, like he was choosing his position in the story. Behind the curtain, Emily's monitor kept beeping, and in that sound, I heard the beginning of a plan. I nodded, and for the first time since the sidewalk, my anger had a direction, straight toward every agency she feared most. I drove us home with both hands welded to the wheel. Emily sat quiet, one palm on her belly, the other gripping the seatbelt. Mark Delaney followed at a distance, close enough to watch, far enough to avoid being mistaken for protection. Our porch light clicked on as we pulled in. Cedar Ridge looked calm, but it felt staged, like the neighborhood was waiting for Veronica Hale's next cue. I helped Emily up the steps. The moment I touched the doorknob, my phone lit again. The board chair had posted a clarification, complete with a photo of the safety and wellness notice board. Emily's name sat centered like a headline. Under it, the enforcer in crimson wrote about ongoing evaluation and temporary restrictions to protect the community. "Temporary," I muttered. "That's how they sneak in permanent." Emily stared at the screen. "They're talking about me like I'm a hazard," she whispered. Then came paper against wood, sharp, deliberate. I opened the door and found an envelope wedged under our welcome mat, stamped with the HOA seal, not mailed, hand-delivered, meant to feel immediate. Inside was a notice of an emergency compliance hearing set for the next afternoon at the clubhouse. It claimed Emily had violated community wellness standards by refusing lawful direction from authorized personnel. Failure to appear, it warned, could trigger fines, suspension of amenities, and referral for removal proceedings. Emily's face drained. "Removal? They're pressuring you," I said, keeping my voice low. "They want you scared and isolated." A second page listed interim restrictions. No walking near the playground, no using the pool path, no attending gatherings until medical suitability is confirmed. The clipboard queen was building a cage out of polite words. Gravel crunched behind us. Mark stepped into the edge of the porch light, hands open, posture careful. He didn't cross the threshold. "They moved fast," he said, eyes scanning the notice. His jaw tightened at authorized personnel. "That's their cover." Emily's breathing hitched. "I asked them to stop. That's all." "I know," Mark said, conflict flashing across his face. "They're laundering a fake incident into an official record. Once it's on file, they'll use it again." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Comply and this goes away." Emily flinched, fingers digging into my arm. I stepped off the porch and scanned the street. A dark SUV sat half a block down with its headlights off. A silhouette shifted in the driver's seat. Then the engine started and the vehicle eased away, slow and confident. "They're watching," Emily said, voice thin. "They're intimidating," I corrected, forcing steadiness. "Because fear is their favorite tool." Mark's gaze tracked the retreating SUV. "That's not a neighbor doing a slow roll," he said. "That's someone on assignment." I folded the notice, not because it deserved respect, but because I wanted it intact. "Tomorrow at the clubhouse," I said. "Veronica Hale wants a stage." Emily looked up, anger and hurt tangled in her eyes. "What if they push harder?" "Then we push smarter," I said. "We don't fight inside their maze. We force this into the outside world." Mark nodded once. "If you do that," he said, voice rough, "you need something undeniable, not opinions, something that makes agencies move." I looked at Emily standing in our doorway like she was being erased in public. "Then that's what we get," I said, and my promise hardened. A fresh notification popped up. Veronica Hale scheduling a wellness check for Dawn, as if my wife were property to be inspected. Down the street, the Safety and Wellness Board glowed under a street lamp, and a new orange sticker had appeared on a neighbor's windshield publicly. The message was clear: comply or be marked next again. Behind us, the porch light hummed, steady as a heartbeat, while somewhere in Cedar Ridge, the tyrant in heels was already counting on our fear. I didn't sleep. Not after seeing Emily's name pinned to that board like a warning label. Not after the dark SUV crawled away like it owned the street. When Mark Delaney finally walked back toward his car, he paused at the bottom step like he wanted to say more, then swallowed it. "Text me if they show up," he said. "They already have," I replied, showing him the anonymous message. "Comply, and this goes away." His eyes tightened. "That's not HOA behavior," he muttered. "That's intimidation." When his taillights vanished, I guided Emily inside and locked the door. She leaned against the counter, breathing slow, trying to look steady for me. "I'm not letting them do a dawn check," she said. "Not alone." "You won't be alone," I promised, but I didn't tell her where I was going. I didn't want fear settling deeper. I grabbed my laptop, my phone, and the envelope with Veronica Hale's seal, then slipped back out to my truck. The neighborhood was too quiet, like every porch light was still an eye. I drove to the all-night gas station, the one with fluorescent lighting and cameras over every pump. If the board chair wanted a stage, I chose a place where everything was recorded. I parked under a camera and let my training take over. The clipboard queen had called him a contracted patrol agent. That meant a company, a license, a registration trail. If it existed, it would show up fast. If it didn't, that absence would matter even more. I pulled up the state licensing portal for private security and armed guards, then searched the name I'd heard the fake officer bark into his radio. Nothing. I searched the number printed on the bogus badge. Nothing. I searched Cedar Ridge Patrol, Community Enforcement, every variation of the phrase Veronica Hale loved to hide behind. The database stayed blank. "Of course," I whispered. I called Mark. He answered on the second ring. "You find something?" "He's not licensed," I said. "Not as security, not as a guard, not as anything." "A beat." "That's big," Mark replied. "If he's flashing a badge, it's worse." "It gets worse," I said. "Veronica Hale is putting it in writing that he's authorized." Mark exhaled hard. "She's building liability for the whole association. Carriers don't play with impersonation." That word, carriers, clicked my next move into place. I didn't need to convince the neighborhood. I needed to aim this at people who made money by refusing risk. I opened the HOA's community site and pulled the insurance certificate number from the footer. It wasn't hidden. It was sitting there like they assumed no one would understand it. I copied the carrier name and searched for their fraud and compliance hotline. Emily called me then, her voice steady but tight. "Where are you?" "At the gas station," I said, "under cameras." "Are you safe?" "I'm careful," I promised. "How do you feel?" She hesitated. "Scared," she admitted, "and angry. Mostly angry." "Hold on to that," I told her. "Not the fear. The anger. It'll keep you standing." I ended the call and filled out the carrier's online report. I kept it clinical. HOA leadership authorizing unlicensed security, false representation of law enforcement, harassment of a pregnant resident, threats of removal, intimidation texts, potential discrimination under fair housing protections. I attached screenshots of Veronica Hale's post before she could delete it, and I logged the time. My hands didn't shake until after I hit submit. A car rolled into the lot and slowed behind my truck. My throat tightened. The driver didn't park, just crept, as if reading my plate, then moved on. I shut the laptop and stared at the station sign reflected in my windshield. The tyrant in heels thought she was trapping us inside HOA rules. She had no idea I'd just dragged her into a world where rules had teeth. I started the engine before the station sign finished buzzing in my ears. Veronica Hale had tried to shove my family into a private maze. I was taking the maze to people with badges that actually mattered. The county sheriff's substation sat off the highway behind a row of tired palm trees, all glass doors and hard angles. I parked under a camera, again, because the board chair preferred shadows. Inside, the air smelled like coffee and copier toner. A deputy at the desk looked up, then down at my face like he was sorting where to file me. "I need to report an impersonation incident connected to my HOA," I said. The deputy's eyebrows lifted. "Any injuries?" "My wife was harassed," I answered. "She's pregnant, high risk, and the man presenting himself as enforcement isn't licensed." That word, pregnant, changed the temperature. He straightened. "Name?" "Daniel Whitaker," I said, sliding my phone forward with screenshots already queued. Veronica Hale's post, the authorized personnel line, the hearing notice, the anonymous text. He studied the screen, jaw tightening. "Who's the HOA president?" "Veronica Hale," I said. "The clipboard queen in a red suit." He didn't smile. "We don't do nicknames in reports." "Fine," I said. Veronica Hale directed it. The deputy disappeared through a door, and the wait stretched thin. Every second I pictured Emily's hand on her belly and that fake badge catching sunlight like a weapon. A few minutes later, Mark Delaney stepped out in plain clothes, eyes tired, posture rigid. He froze when he saw me, then exhaled like he'd been bracing for impact. "I didn't tell them you were coming," he said quickly. "I'm glad you're here," I replied. "I need this on record before the tyrant in heels tries a dawn wellness check." Mark's gaze flicked toward the lobby window. "It's already starting," he said. "A vehicle's circling your street." My chest tightened. "Emily's home." "I know," he said. "I asked a patrol unit to swing by. Official." The deputy returned with a supervisor, a sergeant with a worn face and a careful stare. He listened without interrupting, then tapped the screen where Veronica Hale had typed, "Authorized." "This is a problem," he said. "If he's posing as law enforcement, we take it seriously. If she's directing it, we take it personally." "I already filed with the HOA's insurance carrier," I said. "Fraud and compliance." That earned a sharper look. "You moved fast." "I audit risk for a living," I said, "and the enforcer in crimson just turned my wife into a target." The sergeant asked for the timeline, and I gave it, clean and exact. He asked for witnesses, and I said there were neighbors with phones out, plus street cameras. He asked about the man in costume, and I said he went down hard when the moment snapped. No theatrics, just consequence. Mark stood to the side, hands clasped, swallowing like he was forcing himself to stay in the room. When the sergeant mentioned contacting the HOA, Mark flinched. "She'll retaliate," Mark blurted, then caught himself. His ears reddened. "Veronica Hale doesn't back off. She escalates." The sergeant's gaze pinned him. "You know her?" Mark hesitated, then nodded once. "I live in Cedar Ridge. I've seen how she operates." That admission cost him. I could see it in his shoulders, in the way he didn't quite breathe. The sergeant turned back to me. "We'll open a case," he said. "If anyone shows up claiming authority, you call 911 immediately." I stood, heart pounding, decision fully made. "I'm not waiting for the board chair to pick the next moment," I said. "I'm going after her system, today." Outside, dawn thinned the sky, and my phone buzzed again. Another HOA notification, an updated agenda. Emily's name in bold. Veronica Hale was calling it a hearing. I was calling it evidence. My hands were steady, somehow. I was still in the parking lot, phone in my hand, staring at the updated agenda like it was a blade. Emily's name sat there in bold, wedged between safety review and community wellness enforcement update. Veronica Hale had turned my wife into a bullet point. Mark Delaney touched my elbow. Don't go home yet, he said, low. His eyes kept scanning the road. Come with me. 5 minutes. I can talk where it's quiet. We drove to a small church lot on the edge of Cedar Ridge. A security camera blinked above the side door. Mark killed the engine and sat with both hands on the wheel. You're shaking, I said. I know, he murmured. I'm trying not to. He finally looked at me. Veronica Hale didn't just hire that guy, he said. She's been paying him off the books. My pulse jumped. How do you know that? Mark swallowed. Because she tried to rope me into it. The words landed hard. He kept going before I could speak. 2 months ago, the board chair cornered me after a meeting. She called me Officer Delaney, like we were buddies, and said she needed real law enforcement presence to keep neighbors in line. And you said no, I said. I told her she had no authority, he replied. She laughed. Said authority is a story people believe if you tell it loud enough. His eyes flicked to the camera, then back. She offered advisory pay, cash. When I refused, Mark said, voice tightening, she warned me she'd file complaints, call my supervisors, paint me as the problem. She knows how to weaponize optics. So you stayed quiet, I said, not cruel, just honest. His face pinched. Yeah, I hated myself for it. He rubbed his forehead. Yesterday, when I saw the clipboard queen hand that folder to the fake cop, I knew it wasn't random. It's her script, her incident forms, her target list. He swallowed. And I'd bet Emily's name is on it. My stomach turned. I need something the sheriff's office can act on, I said. Something clean. Mark nodded. Then here's what I can give you. He pulled out his phone and opened a voicemail. She called me last night after the incident, furious. You kept it. I kept it because I don't trust her, he admitted. He hit play and held the phone between us. Veronica Hale's voice came through, polished and sharp. She demanded cooperation, referenced our patrol contract, and warned that any deputy who undermines community enforcement will regret it. No screaming, just threat, controlled and deliberate. Mark stopped it, breathing hard. That's my confession, he said. I've had proof, and I didn't use it. I stared at the screen like it was a key. This ties her directly to the program, I said. Intent, pressure, connection. And there's more, he added. The enforcer in crimson meets him at the clubhouse maintenance gate. Mondays. She hands him envelopes. Cash. His voice cracked. I saw it once, told myself it wasn't my business. I was wrong. I kept my voice calm. You're choosing a side, I said. Mark's eyes glistened. He nodded once. I'm done letting Veronica Hale scare me. My phone buzzed again. Another HOA alert. The board chair was calling the hearing mandatory now, as if bold font could make her power legal. I pocketed my phone and met Mark's gaze. We take this to the sergeant, I said. Today, before she scrubs her story. Mark exhaled, shoulders dropping with relief and fear at the same time. The church bell chimed the hour, soft and steady, and I felt something shift. For the first time since the badge hit the pavement, I wasn't just reacting, I was building a case. Across the street, a dark SUV idled for one breath, then eased away, and I knew Veronica Hale was hunting for our next mistake. Across the street, the dark SUV drifted away like it had never been there. Mark and I didn't chase it. Chasing ghosts is how you miss the hand holding the leash. At the sheriff's substation, the lobby lights felt harsher than before. The sergeant listened to the voicemail with his arms folded, jaw set, eyes narrowing, every time Veronica Hale's voice sharpened into a threat. When it ended, silence hung for a beat. That's enough to open a wider investigation, he said. But you're going to the hearing? I'm not walking into the board chair's theater unarmed, I replied. I'm building pressure from the outside first. Mark glanced at me, relieved and terrified. The sergeant slid a card across the counter. City Code compliance. Ask for Alvarez. Tell him I sent you. An hour later, I stood inside the municipal building downtown under fluorescent lights. A security guard waved me through a metal detector, and my phone buzzed with another HOA reminder like the clipboard queen could summon me with a notification. A woman behind the code compliance desk looked up. Name? Daniel Whitaker, I said. I need to report unauthorized enforcement activity tied to an HOA. It involves impersonation and harassment of a pregnant resident. That last word made her expression change. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, and a few minutes later, a man in a rumpled shirt and city badge appeared, coffee in hand. "Alvarez," he introduced himself, then took one look at my screenshots. "Start at the beginning." I gave him the timeline clean and tight. The fake badge, the public unfit claim, the emergency hearing notice, the intimidation texts, Veronica Hale's posts calling the impersonator authorized personnel. I played the voicemail. Alvarez took notes and underlined the same phrase twice. "Private roads?" he asked. "Mostly," I said, "but the sidewalks connect to a public easement, and the HOA is acting like they can police health and movement." Alvarez leaned back. "HOAs can enforce covenants," he said. "They can't create police. They can't conduct wellness checks like they're a government agency. If there's harassment tied to protected status, pregnancy, medical condition, that's bigger." "I'm not here for advice," I said. "I'm here for action." He studied me, then nodded. "Action looks like jurisdiction," he said. "We can send an inspector to observe any check that spills into public space. We can issue a cease and desist letter if the HOA represents authority it doesn't have, and we can notify their insurer if they're exposing the city to incident spillover." That word again, insurer. The tyrant in heels would hate that. I slid the hearing notice toward him. "Tomorrow afternoon," I said. "Clubhouse." Alvarez tapped the paper. "They're calling it mandatory?" He let out a short breath. "All right, keep your wife away from that room. Let them talk. Don't escalate. Record anything said in a common area where it's allowed. If the fake officer shows up, call the sheriff immediately." Outside the window, traffic hissed on wet pavement, and my stomach clenched at the thought of Emily alone. The enforcer in crimson loved dawn. Quiet streets, fewer witnesses, easier fear. Not today. I wouldn't give her that. My phone rang. "Emily." I stepped into the hallway. "Hey, they're outside," she whispered. "A man in a windbreaker and the fake cop. They're at the curb. Veronica Hale is with them." Heat flashed through me. "Don't open the door," I said. "Stay inside. Lock it." "She's pointing at the notice board like she's presenting a case," Emily breathed. "They're looking at our house." I forced my voice steady. "I'm calling Mark," I said. "And I'm calling patrol. You're not alone." When I walked back to Alvarez's office, my words came out flat and controlled. "They just started the dawn check," I said. "Right now." Alvarez grabbed his keys. "Then we'll document it," he said. "And Veronica Hale won't like who's watching this time." Alvarez and I moved fast, his city pickup smelling like old coffee. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other gripping his badge wallet. I stared at my phone, watching Emily's dot sit stubbornly at our house. "Patrol's on the way," I told him after Mark answered. 2 minutes. "Good," Alvarez said. "I want them to see me, not just you." At Cedar Ridge, the entrance sign, "Private Community, Safety First," loomed like a dare. Under the street lamp near the gate keypad and camera dome, the board chair had gathered her cast. Veronica Hale stood in a crisp crimson suit, chin raised, clipboard held like a badge. Beside her, the fake officer shifted his stance, trying to look official. A man in a windbreaker hovered near a dark SUV, eyes flicking between Emily's front door and the road like he expected uniforms to arrive. I didn't pull up to my driveway. Alvarez eased into the visitor lane by the gate, directly under the camera. If the enforcer in crimson wanted wellness checks, she was doing it on record now. Alvarez stepped out first. He walked like a man who'd written citations for years and didn't care about theatrics. I followed, phone already recording, my knuckles white around it. Veronica Hale noticed us and froze for half a second. Then the smile snapped back, sharp and practiced. "This is private property," she said. "You can't interfere with community enforcement." Alvarez lifted his badge wallet. "City code compliance," he replied. "I'm observing activity that appears to cross into public right-of-way and misrepresentation of authority." The clipboard queen's eyes narrowed. "We're conducting a wellness review for safety." "Whose safety?" I asked. "My wife's or your paperwork?" The fake officer took a step toward me, then hesitated when Alvarez didn't flinch. His hand hovered near his belt. I kept the lens steady. A patrol car rolled up behind us, tires crunching gravel. Mark Delaney arrived a heartbeat later in his own vehicle, face tight, posture rigid. He didn't look at Veronica first. He looked at the badge. Sir, the patrol deputy called, step away from the residence. Veronica Hale snapped. He's authorized by the HOA. The deputy's gaze turned flat. Authorized by who, ma'am? Show me credentials. The tyrant in heels lifted her clipboard like it was proof. It's in our contract. Alvarez's tone stayed calm. Then provide the licensing number for your contracted patrol agent. Right now. Silence stretched. The windbreaker guy shifted, shoulders hunching. The fake officer's jaw worked. No number came. Emily's front curtain twitched. I hated that she had to watch this from behind glass. I could almost feel her pulse through it, fighting to stay calm for our baby. Veronica Hale pivoted, switching tactics. Daniel is harassing our staff, she said. He's unstable. His wife's condition is making him irrational. That line was poison, aimed at the deputies. Mark stepped forward, hands visible, voice controlled. Ma'am, don't use medical status as a weapon. That's not how this works. The board chair's eyes flashed. Officer Delaney, so you're taking sides. Mark didn't blink. I'm taking the law, he said, and that man isn't it. Alvarez nodded toward the gate camera. All of this is being recorded, he said. Any further attempt to impersonate authority will be documented and referred. The fake officer backed off, one step, then another, suddenly smaller without Veronica's confidence. The enforcer in crimson looked around and realized the street had changed. Not because I'd shouted, because real authority had arrived and it didn't answer to her. I kept filming as the deputy took names, as Alvarez noted the time, as Mark watched the windbreaker guy slip into the SUV. When it finally pulled away, slow and resentful, I knew the next move wouldn't be on the sidewalk. It would be in the clubhouse, under lights, with witnesses. And I was going in ready. I drove straight from the gate to my office downtown, the kind of place with glass walls and quiet hallways where panic doesn't belong. My hands still smelled like metal from gripping my phone, and my throat felt raw from holding back words I didn't want to waste on Veronica Hale. I'd told myself I was going into the clubhouse ready. Now I had to earn that. I set my laptop down, pulled up the recordings, and started building a timeline the way I'd done for municipal audits. Clean, numbered, impossible to twist. Emily called while I was labeling files. They left, she said. But the board chair is still posting. She's saying the city trespassed and that you're being investigated. I shut my eyes for a beat. You okay? I'm trying, she whispered. The baby's moving a lot. Sit down, I said. Feet up. Water. I'm not letting the tyrant in heels pull you into another scene. A knock tapped the glass. My coworker, Janet, leaned in with a concerned look. I waved her in. You look like you haven't slept, she said. I haven't, I admitted. I need a conference line and a printer. Fast. Janet's gaze flicked to the red stamp on the HOA envelope. Trouble? Veronica Hale trouble, I said, and that was all it took for her expression to harden. In our line of work, a paper trail isn't paperwork, it's leverage. While Janet set up the printer, I called the insurance carrier's compliance hotline again. A human voice answered this time, calm and professional. Special investigations, the woman said. This is Tessa. I submitted a report last night, I told her. It's escalating. City code compliance and sheriff's deputies witnessed unauthorized enforcement activity this morning. The HOA president is publicly representing an unlicensed man as authorized personnel. Tessa didn't gasp. She didn't need to. Do you have documentation of her statements? I have screenshots, video, and a recorded voicemail where she pressures a deputy to cooperate, I said. I can send it now. Send it, she replied, sharper now. And Mr. Whitaker, if there's impersonation and harassment tied to a protected medical condition, our carrier takes that seriously. I glanced at the hearing notice on my table. They scheduled an emergency hearing at the clubhouse this afternoon. Tessa's voice cooled. If they're convening an action that increases exposure after notice, that can impact coverage. We may contact their board directly. That was the lever I needed. The clipboard queen could bully neighbors. She couldn't bully an insurer's risk department. My phone buzzed again. Mark Delaney, I answered and put him on speaker. They're regrouping, he said. Veronica Hale is calling board members, telling them you and Alvarez ambushed her. She's trying to lock the room down for the hearing. Can she? I asked. Not legally, Mark said, then paused. I could hear his conflict reappear, quieter, but still there. But she'll try. She's already told the fake cop to show up in security attire. Tell the sergeant, I said. I want a uniformed deputy present. I'm on it, Mark replied, voice firming. And Daniel, I'm sorry I waited so long. Don't apologize, I told him. Just stay in it. Janet returned with a stack of printed pages, screenshots, the hearing notice, the anonymous intimidation text. I clipped them together, then slid them into a folder like evidence, not like HOA drama. Before I left, I recorded one short message to myself, a reminder. Don't get pulled into their emotions. Make them answer to the outside world. When I stepped back into the sunlight, my phone lit up with one more push notification from the board chair. Agenda updated again. Emily's name bolded twice. Veronica Hale wanted a spectacle. Fine. And I wasn't walking in alone, not anymore. I was bringing witnesses, agencies, and consequences, and I was walking into that clubhouse to make her feel the ground shift. I pulled into the clubhouse lot and saw it immediately, packed. Cars lined the curb, neighbors flowing toward the doors like they'd been summoned by something deeper than an email. Emily stayed in the passenger seat. The doctor had warned us about stress, and Veronica Hale loved turning pain into a performance. I squeezed her hand. You don't have to go in, I said. I want to, she whispered. But if my breathing starts, get me out. I promise, I said, settling her with water and the seat reclined. Then I walked inside with my folder and my phone. Mark promised an officer would be present, and Alvarez said he'd arrive when it started. The meeting room buzzed with folding chairs and low voices. A poster by the entrance read, Safety and Wellness. Linda Morales stood near the back, arms crossed, jaw set. Dozens of faces turned as I entered, the kind of attention that makes your skin prickle. At the front table, the board chair sat upright with a gavel and a clipboard. Veronica Hale looked polished, composed, like she'd rehearsed the outrage she planned to sell. Along the wall stood the fake officer in security attire, hands clasped. When he saw me, his chin lifted, pretending he belonged. Veronica Hale struck the gavel. This emergency compliance hearing will come to order, she announced. We're addressing dangerous behavior and community risk. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone muttered, Her pregnancy isn't a risk. I stepped into the center aisle and held up my folder. Before you label anyone dangerous, I said, I want one thing on the record. Who exactly is that man, and what authority do you claim he has? The tyrant in heels smiled. He's contracted, she said, for community security. A deputy in uniform emerged from the side door. Ma'am, he said, calm, if you're claiming security, we need his license. Veronica Hale's smile tightened. This is an HOA matter, she snapped. It stopped being only that, Alvarez said as he walked in, city badge visible. Conversations died like a switch flipped. I'm here as city code compliance to observe any misrepresentation of governmental authority. The clipboard queen's eyes flashed. You're not invited. Alvarez didn't blink. Invitation isn't the issue. Conduct is. The fake officer shifted, shoulders tense. I saw sweat at his hairline. Veronica Hale tried to bulldoze forward, reading from her papers. Resident Emily Whitaker has demonstrated... Stop, I cut in. My wife is high-risk pregnant. You don't get to brand her unfit because you want control. A wave of sound rose. An older woman stood. She did it to my sister, she called. Said her walker was a hazard. Another neighbor shouted, My mom got fined for oxygen delivery. Veronica Hale banged the gavel, face reddening. Order. This is exactly the instability we're talking about. That's when my phone rang. I answered on speaker. Daniel Whitaker, I said. This is Tessa, the voice said, clear enough for the first rouse. Special investigations with your HOA's carrier. We're issuing an immediate reservation of rights and opening a fraud inquiry regarding unauthorized enforcement activity and potential impersonation. The board will receive formal notice tonight. The room went silent, then erupted. Chairs scraped. People turned toward Veronica Hale. The enforcer in crimson sat frozen, gavel forgotten. Alvarez spoke into the hush. Any continued use of unlicensed enforcement will be documented for referral. The deputy's gaze locked on the fake officer. Step outside with me, he said. Now. The man hesitated. Veronica Hale's head snapped toward him, warning in her eyes. He moved anyway, one step at a time, and the crowd tracked him like a curtain falling. Mark Delaney stood near the wall, shoulders squared. He met Veronica Hale's stare and didn't look away. And in that moment, the board chair's power didn't vanish in a scream. It cracked in public, under witness, and everyone felt it. Mark Delaney stood near the wall, shoulders squared. He met Veronica Hale's stare and didn't look away. And in that moment, the board chair's power didn't vanish in a scream. It cracked in public, under witness, and everyone felt it. Even after the fake officer disappeared with the deputy, the room didn't settle. It swelled. Neighbors traded stories of wellness warnings and stickers on windshields. Veronica Hale gripped the gavel like it could stitch control back together, but the sound around her wasn't fear anymore. It was recognition. Alvarez stepped forward, voice level. "I'm documenting tonight's proceedings," he said. "Any attempt to represent governmental authority or conduct wellness checks will be referred to the city attorney's office." Veronica Hale snapped. "You can't." "You can," Linda Morales called from the back. "You just never thought anyone would stop you." A wave of agreement rolled through the chairs. The enforcer in crimson tried to slam the gavel again, but the room ignored it. Someone demanded a special election. Another neighbor demanded the Safety and Wellness Board be removed. The clipboard queen's cheeks flushed, and she tried to hide behind procedure. My phone buzzed with an email. Tessa, from Special Investigations, confirmed an active fraud review and warned that board actions taken after notice could jeopardize coverage. I turned the screen toward Alvarez, then toward Mark. Their faces told me the same truth. Veronica Hale had just dragged the association into consequences she couldn't vote away. Mark cleared his throat. His hands shook once, then steadied. "Sergeant's opening a case," he said, "and I'm giving a statement about the pressure, about the calls, about the cash." Veronica Hale's head whipped toward him. "You're betraying your community." Mark didn't blink. "I'm protecting it," he said. That sentence hit the room like a door finally opening. People stood. Voices rose. The tyrant in heels tried to label it instability, but no one flinched this time. They'd watched her weaponize that word against a pregnant woman. I stepped closer to the front table, keeping my tone calm. "This doesn't have to become chaos," I said. "It can become accountability, a special election, interim oversight, no more secret enforcement, no more public shaming." Veronica Hale stared at me like she wanted to burn the words off my mouth, but she couldn't. Not with Alvarez recording, not with the deputy outside. I walked out to the parking lot and found Emily sitting upright in the passenger seat, eyes shining in the dashboard light. When she saw my face, her shoulders dropped, and she let out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it since the sidewalk. "It's over?" she asked. "It's turning," I told her. "The outside world is in it now." She pressed my hand to her belly. Our baby kicked, sudden and firm. Through the clubhouse windows, silhouettes moved, hands gestured, and neighbors spoke without whispering. Over the next week, the city issued a cease and desist about misrepresentation and unauthorized enforcement. The carrier sent investigators. The sheriff's office followed the impersonation lead. Veronica Hale tried to posture online, but each post got met with screenshots and witnesses. The Safety and Wellness Board came down first, unbolted by residents who were done being displayed. On election night, Linda squeezed Emily's shoulder and smiled like she'd waited years for that moment. Mark stood near the doorway, not hiding anymore, and Veronica Hale, no longer the board chair, no longer the enforcer in crimson, walked past without her gavel, eyes down, finally just another resident facing rules she couldn't twist. Driving home, I realized Cedar Ridge wasn't just saving my family. It was saving every neighbor who'd been cornered by paperwork and fear. Emily slept with her hand on her belly, finally safe. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.